Hello everyone, welcome to One More Step to Wellness. I am your friend and host Juliet, and I'm here to say how grateful I am that you chose to join me today on this channel. I appreciate you coming. I know there's plenty of options out there and you could have chosen otherwise, but again, I'm grateful you're here. I want to continue our conversation about emotional health and wellness. It is one of those 8 dimensions of wellness that I've talked about, and I mentioned these 8 key areas of health that we must consider when we're trying to design a wellness plan for ourselves. I told you that there are 8 dimensions of wellness that we must consider. They're occupational health and wellness, financial health and wellness, physical health and wellness, spiritual health and wellness, social health and wellness, emotional health and wellness, environmental health and wellness, and intellectual health and wellness. In addition, I want you to consider gauging how you feel every day and use these key areas of health to determine what is the issue, what is causing you to feel the way you do, what are some of the stressors that you're experiencing, and how best can you look at what the root cause is as it relates to these areas to begin managing and making the necessary changes. Unless we kind of know what is causing the issue, there is nowhere for us to go. So our sense of awareness must come from a place that makes sense. We cannot kind of move around making things up. We have to know what is really causing the problems that we face in our lives that are affecting our mental health. For all of us, it may vary. Not everyone has the same issue, but nonetheless, our emotions are really important, and we have to spend time with ourselves to figure out really what is going on. How best can I manage my emotional health and my mental health? Because unless the brain works, unless we are doing well mentally, then really nothing else will work well. Our emotional health also affects the relationships that we have in our lives every day. Our emotions guide everything that we do. And when we're going through very difficult times, it is really hard for us to think straight. Spending time with ourselves is just a real investment in our own personal health. So if we're having trouble physically, what if our health isn't doing so well? Well, our emotions are going to be affected. What if things aren't going well at work? That's a part of our occupational health. What about relationships and friendships? What if those things aren't going so well? Our emotions are going to be affected. What if we live in an area that is unsafe? You constantly go to bed and you just cannot feel settled because you're not living in a safe environment. What if you have challenges with your education, like you're not able to go to school, you cannot pay your school fee, those kind of things are real, So our emotions are affected by everything. So that is why investing time to kind of really understand what is happening and how to really test the temperature of our emotions. It is really a great investment. And that is why I'm here. As a mental health nurse practitioner, I'm able to offer that kind of oversight and advice, just to help us all get back on track. Personally, there are some things that I do to be sure that I'm keeping my emotions in check. We all face challenges every day, and I am no exception. But one of the most important thing I do is to, when things are going well, is to really invest in my, building mental muscle with my emotions. So it means then that I will need to practice. And sometimes we can't leave ourselves to kind of come up with the solutions when things come our way. We have to have a bank where we can pull from whenever we are going through stressful times and we're experiencing the turbulence of emotions that we feel at times, because we never know what life is going to throw our way. We shouldn't be scared of spending time with ourselves, we're left with ourselves all day long. So it's worthwhile recognizing that we do have strengths and we have weaknesses, and we must be able to identify those, because our strengths are going to come through for us when we need it most. But if we don't know our strengths and we do not know our weaknesses, then how can we how can we pull from that bank? So I would recommend that we now, for this moment, spend some time and invest in ourselves, invest in learning more about ourselves, recognizing that there are some negative emotions that can cause a significant, it can cause big problems in our lives if we continue to fester that stuff, and if they continue to grow, like anger, like I talked about before, and fear. Those are two emotions that are very negative. And when we are in a negative space, we make very much irrational decisions that really do not benefit any one of us in the long run. So let's take a look now at a couple of things that I think are important that we consider to help regulate our emotions. I'm going to give you 4 techniques that you can consider. Number 1, there is something called thought stopping. When you start to think a certain way, especially when you're faced with a challenge where you believe your emotions could get out of hand, you're going to respond to something a certain way. Take a look at what you're thinking at that time and believe it. I know it's not easy, because when you're faced with some very difficult situations, you cannot think. There is no rational thought that happens when you're faced with something that you must address immediately. For some, it is, they have to do something violent. They have to punch and kick and bite, whatever you're doing physically. Again, reacting to some of these emotional issues will include thoughts, your feelings, and your actions. So it is important for us to stop some of the thoughts that we have that we're trying to use to deal with the issue. Everyone responds differently, but stopping the thought and replacing the thought you have or a word with another positive word will always require practice. You cannot do that in the moment. So say you're faced with a situation where someone says something that is very unkind. I want you to start thinking about something else that you can do to literally turn that word or sentence or phrase back with a positive spin and allow time for you to kind of calm down before you respond. Let me give you an example. If someone says you are a bad girl or you are a bad boy, well, before that word before you spit out that word in response to what was said, you could perhaps say, tell me more and help me understand why you said I am a bad girl or a bad boy. You perhaps could say that, because it allows that other person to have to clarify more of what they just said. You do not have to internalize that word or phrase as quickly. So what you do is literally buy yourself some time. And by the time they're done explaining, then you may not have to respond at all. You would have bought yourself enough time to calm down. Word stopping also includes this. Replace the word bad immediately with a word that you truly believe about yourself. I hope that makes sense. But for every unkind word, you can say another kind word. Another technique to managing and regulating our emotion, something very simple and something very ordinary. It is something you possess all the time. You don't have to go looking for it. After all, many techniques that we must utilize when we're trying to manage our emotions are very simple approaches. Taking a nice, soothing, relaxing breath allows you to gather yourself. Studies have shown systematic deep breathing. Just breathing. Inhale, hold, and exhale really does help to calm the nervous system. We should not underestimate effective breathing. In addition to that, walking away and removing yourself from the physical location or the environment where you believe could be that trigger or that stressful space is also very effective. Walking away from a situation that is just not supportive of your mental health is not a bad idea. Using some of these relaxation skills are very helpful. Another technique to regulating your emotion is also something that you can do physically, like tightening the fist, just squeezing the fist and holding your fist tightly. You could put that in your pocket. You could just place your hand behind your back. You could just, of course, depending on where you are, in what position, is just clench your fist really tight without having to appear combative. Also squeezing the toes, just kind of squeezing the toes tightly will be helpful too. These are just simple things that you could consider. It may not work for everyone, but these are just some recommendations to kind of just buy time or to just help us calm down a little bit just before we get to a point of boiling. Switching from one emotion to the next is not easy, so it's going to take work. And that is why I suggest that prior to some of these uncomfortable situations, we try to recognize who we are, identify our strengths, identify our weaknesses, and see how best we can come up with a plan to prepare for some of these things that might come. What is the root cause of the emotional changes that we're experiencing? So if your work is causing some stress, then you want to make some adjustments in the area of work, because no tightening of the fist, no clenching of the toes, no deep breathing is going to take away some of those problems that you have on your job. But you can make those other adjustments as it relates to that specific stressor to alleviate the emotional toll on your body. But again, if you believe that there is a financial issue, for example, well, you want to take some steps in managing those things so you're not going to be emotionally hijacked. You take a look at those key areas of health and identify the issues relating to the stressors you're feeling and build the bank of emotional wellness. I am going to recommend journaling. Writing down very positive things that you appreciate, that the brain is going to remember, especially at times when life gets tough. So yes, I have my own little journal. It says, "Be Still," a prayer journal for women. And when I open my journal and I make my notes, I of course take a look at what is written in these journals, because sometimes they come with some really nice messages, So I always write down some of the things that has worked for me in the past, that has come through for me, and they continue to work. So there are times when we kind of look around for the things that are not going so well, but with gratitude, you're able to identify things that are going great. So that's also another technique that we should consider. I recently came across a little book that says 101 ways to have a happy day. On the front of this book, it says, slow down, smile, unplug, relax, laugh out loud, keep calm, go outside, give thanks, have fun, and speak life. Because the brain remembers this stuff. And when you're well, this is what you do. You flood your thoughts with positive things. So when something is uttered in negativity, you are able to counteract it with something positive that you learned when you felt well. Attitude is everything. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. So attitude is everything. Life is 10% of what happens to you and 90% of how you react to it. I really like these little books because it really draws reference again to the scriptures, and I'm always interested in reading and understanding what the scriptures say about life. One of the best ways I think that we can really change or day, no matter what is going on, if you're able to pick or buy a bunch of flowers and put them somewhere in your home where you can see them and enjoy their fragrance. And it also has a related Bible text. It says, Ephesians 5 verse 2 says this, walk in the way of love, just as Christ loved us and gave himself up for us as a fragrant offering and sacrifice to God. If I'm in a physical space where I see flowers and I'm smelling the perfume from the flowers, I may just now take a nice deep breath and look at those flowers and things just start to change. Remember, the brain is going to remember what you gave it earlier. It will feed into all that you have already poured in. I'm going to give you one last thing to think about, the word smile. Just think about the word smile. S-C-M, miracles, I-N-L, life, E, every day. See miracles in life every day. And there's also another scripture that goes with that. Psalm 135 verse 3 says, praise the Lord, for the Lord is good. Sing praises to his name, for it is pleasant. Life is very stressful. You are not alone. Everyone is going through a difficult time. So we must be very kind to others, be very compassionate to others, but more so to ourselves. Finding a way to stop some of the negative thoughts and the words that come into our head about ourselves is really important. Keep a journal of your thoughts and those words and come up with positive words. If a negative word comes to mind, do something positive. Think about something positive that can counteract that stuff. Taking a breath at times really does help. Breathing, it doesn't come at a fair price. You don't have to go bite anywhere. That's something that you possess that you can do of yourself. Do not allow all that is external to determine your attitude. Your attitude is everything. There are times we can also envision ourselves in very comfortable places, in places that you have visited, places you have liked. Sometimes just closing our eyes and thinking about these very desirable experiences for those who travel extensively, or you have had some really amazing friends, you've been in their company and so on over time. You can recall that information. Train your brain to recall this information so that you can use it when you need it. Those are some strategies that we can use to regulate our emotions. And again, you don't have to go bite anywhere. This is just stuff that when you spend time with yourself, you know yourself more than everyone else. Spend time with yourself. Write your thoughts. I shared with you that I do the same thing. Take one step at a time, no matter how small. It is time that we take our own personal health in our hands and trust those who are here to support you. Bring a friend, come back, subscribe to this channel, stay engaged, comment, and as we say back home in Jamaica, until next time, I'll see you again. Walk good. Be well.